Anne married the man of her dreams.
Clay has his faults, but he's a good father.
Clay, you're scaring her.
Family life was doomed.
He loves me.
Is that why he hit you? Out of love?
And a prisoner of an unhappy marriage becomes a state prisoner for his crime of passion.
Hey, Modell!
It was my fault. I shot Dale Modell.
The Unspoken Truth, tonight at 9 on BBC Two.
To be or not to be? To be or not to be? To be or not to be?
That is the question.
To be.
You wouldn't watch a one-line play. That's why BBC Radio 3 has more than just famous extracts of classical music.
To be or not?
Will you make your mind up, matey?
In Tune on BBC Radio 3 gives you more than just the famous bits.
Only the best in the world gather at the table for world-class snooker over on BBC One now. It's a case of how old and how much here on BBC Two. Going, Going, Gone with Stuart Hall.
Thank you very much, thank you. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome once again to Gothic Grange and the glorious Gary Muffrey that is going, Gone. We have a pulchritudinous pair of panellists who will join our antiques expert to tell a tale or two about his selection of fine antiques. Our two talented contestants must choose the true version before all is revealed when we see that very item sold at auction. Lot number one is an early form of air conditioning, or could it be a modern copy? Next up, this item which looks like a cross between a teapot and the FA Cup. Finally, what is the mystery held within this box? We'll find out later, but first, to our panel. The expert, Tim Wonnacott. And next up is Hazel Irvine. She's ubiquitous. She's on every BBC programme you've ever seen. Very, very famous indeed. And finally, there's a phrase here, I think, that's very apt for you. The only way to render age vigorous is to prolong the youth of the mind. Ned Sherrin.
I think the only person to have on an antique show is an antique, which is why I'm here.
Oh, modesty, modesty. Welcome them, please, our distinguished panel. Come on. And challenging them, equally distinguished, our two contestants. First of all, from Woodbridge in Suffolk, Jenny McMillan. What have you brought in to show us, by the way?
This is a Wedgwood lustreware bowl, and it was made earlier this century, about 1920, something like that. And that was Wedgwood's first sort of foray into bone china.
Very delicate.
And that was the first thing I bought at auction.
Very much like Jenny herself. Oh, now, your challenger is from Rochdale, Stephen Hilton, and he collects cigarette cards, motorbikes, everything. A bit of a magpie, aren't you?
Just a little bit, Stuart, yes.
Yeah. What have you brought in to show us?
I brought some cigarette card silks. They're from the period between 1910 to about 1930-ish.
Welcome, please, our two contestants. Come on. Have our way. And now, on with the business of the day. The first round, it's lot one, Halls of Shrewsbury, and here it is. 'Tis a fan, but I spot several characters from That Was the Week That Was. Ha! There's Millie Martin, David Frost swooning at his own wit. Tim, first of all, fan the flames.
Well, this is a lovely fan that dates from just the tad at the end of the 18th century. 1793, French Revolution, the end of the aristocratic process. That's when it dates from. End of the 18th century. Apart from this air conditioning, which we've been told about, it also acts as an aid memoir, because on the reverse, which you can't see, on the back are the steps to three currently fashionable dances at the end of the 18th century, one including the bagatelle, The individual sticks or leaves are fixed in position when it's open so that the fan can be left open for reference if you need to have a crib as to what dance is coming up. The chinoiserie or Eastern-style decoration on the silk-covered leaves is common at that period, and the level of the detail on this is particularly good, and that's why it made a good price of £150 at auction.
£150. Hazel!
That was a load of old nonsense.
Not for the first time.
Sorry about that, Tim. But what I want you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to put yourselves in Emma Thompson mode, because no good dramatisation of a Jane Austen novel was complete without a fan. Now, this one, as you've been seeing, dates actually from 1810. Now, I say ladies were wielding fans in those days because, as you know, a fan had a sort of complicated language all of its own. So, in other words, if Colin Firth was playing Mr. Darcy, you would wield it in a sort of alluring manner, come hither. But if it wasn't, if it was Tim or Ned or anyone else, sorry about that, chaps, you'd be fanning them away. Now, this was a time when British obsession with the East was at its absolute height. But there is a bit of a giveaway. If you look very closely at some of the detail on the figures themselves, you'll see that they do betray some English origins. So it's not quite the genuine article. And this little fan fetched £100 at auction.
Ned, let us turn to you. Have you found at all in it?
Well, they've both been trying to explain away the Japanese thing here with, you know, these complicated French and Pride and Prejudice sort of things. It is obviously a Japanese fan. It's made in the Meiji period, which is, what, 1868, 1912. It's of the folding type, said to have been modelled on a bird's wing. This one's probably intended for the West, where Eastern decoration was very popular. The work on it is absolutely fabulous. Painted scenes on both sides, and exquisite shibayama decoration all around the edges. There's insects there. Fans like this were produced in huge quantities. The printed decoration is hand-coloured, and the best examples can fetch thousands of pounds at auction. The price of this one was very modest by comparison, £120.
So I'll sum up. Hazel, an English fan in the Japanese style, £100. Ned, a Japanese fan made for the Western market, a bit of a cheapo, at £120. And Tim, an aide-memoire fan made in France, £150. So now, spot the truth. The immortal phrase is, show me your paddles. So, Jenny, you're going for... Both going for Ned. Right, Jenny, why do you believe Ned?
I was awfully impressed by all that Shibayana stuff. I think that swayed it, really.
Steve?
I think the appearance of it appeared to be of a later manufacture than the other two were actually saying, than Tim and Hazel were saying. So I went for really the age of it being 1868 to 1912-ish.
Right. Let's see how it went on. Let's return now to Halls of Shrewsbury. This is what happened on the day.
Lot 148. Interest here. I must start at £120. 120 is bid at 120. At £120. We all done. It's to a commission for £120. Selling.
£120 sold to Jenny and Steve. 10 points each. Come on, put your hands together. Oh, congratulations, Ned. But Tim, a further explanation.
Well, everything that Ned tells you, of course, is absolutely true about the Shibayama. Shibayama Doshi was the craftsman who, in the 19th century Meiji period, encrusted often profusely areas of enamel and bone and ivory with these very finely carved little insects within finely gilt areas. This particular stick fan is not particularly well encrusted. There are only kind of 4 rather lonely looking bugs walking up a spine. But in fact, if you saw a Shibayama task vase, which has got all manner of devices inlaid and lacquered onto it, very beautiful art form and extremely expensive. I mean, £20,000 plus for a Shibayama Doshi proper decorated vase. So it's a great object, or a great type of object.
Well, I too am not properly encrusted, so we'll glissade on now to round 2, lot 2, under the hammer at Tennant's, Laban, North Yorkshire, and here it is. A silver teapot or what? For wine, coffee, or something saucy? Made for Uncle George in 1914 or King George in 1750? I turn, first of all, to Lady of Many Parts, historian Hazel.
Indeed. Now, this is a bit of a maverick piece. It's an 18th century coffee pot, very oddly shaped. And it was made by a bit of a maverick himself, a Parisian silversmith by the name of Léonard Agrand. Now, Léonard was a bit of a boy. He often designed pieces quite out of step with his contemporaries because this, as you'll see, has evidence of Scottish connections. It has a saltire engraved on the front of it, evidence of the old alliance which existed between France and Scotland all those years ago. Now, as I say, it's oddly shaped, outstretched handle, elongated spout, squatter than your conventional coffee pots and on a circular raised foot rather than a flat base. Now that also should give something away to you. Now this chap took an awful long time. He worked very slowly, only to commission, and often upset his customers by refusing to follow instructions. I'm not sure whether this was actually commissioned for an Englishman. Perhaps that was something to do with the saltire. His pieces are therefore very scarce and very much sought after. It costs £4,300 at auction.
Ned?
It's a very odd-looking vessel, isn't it? But the clue to it is actually the goblet shape in the middle of it. Its origins, it started life as a very plain, early Georgian wine goblet made in 1715 by Nicholas Lampart of Chester. During the 19th century, it was converted into this hot water jug. They simply added a spout and a handle and a cover, probably taken from other bits and pieces that had been scrapped. It's an awful sort of fate, how the mighty fallen. It starts life as a perfectly respectable goblet holding wine, and it finishes up having hot water poured in and out of it. It's rather like the Feast of Canaan in Galilee in reverse. The piece was returned to Goldsmiths Hall in 1900 to have the editions checked for their silver content and to be re-hallmarked so it can be sold legally. The auction catalogue explained that checkered history, which is where I got it from.
And the price at auction?
480.
480, says Ned. And finally?
Well, this is all nonsense. We've got this wine goblet into water and coffee pots. Ignore it all. What you've got to think is that thick brown stuff called gravy here, all right? This is a delightful object called an argyle. It looks like a coffee pot. It was made in 1789 by John Denzilow, a London silversmith, and it's a very rare thing. The Dukes of Argyll got absolutely hacked off with the gravy turning up cold, so they commissioned a special piece of silver which became known as the Argyll-type gravy boat, and you put your gravy in the middle of it, and you surrounded it by a reservoir of hot water, and although the kitchen might be miles away, the gravy would turn up piping hot on the table. So it's called an Argyle. It's 1789, and of course it's an incredibly rare thing, this Bisto container, and it made £4,400 at auction.
So once again, Jenny and Steve, I'll sum up. Ned says a Georgian wine goblet later converted to a hot water jug, £480. Hazel, an unusual French coffee pot, £4,300. And finally, Tim, it's a type of gravy boat named after the Duke of Argyll at £4,400. Again, I reiterate, only one is telling the truth, two are lying. 'Tis time now to show me your paddles. So, Jenny is going for Hazel, and Steve, you're going for Tim. Tell me why you're going for Tim.
Really, it's just a guess. It doesn't look like a coffee pot to me. It doesn't look like a... It could be a wine goblet been turned into a teapot, but then I wasn't so sure. He sounded more convincing this time than he did last time.
And there's plenty of them in Rochdale as well, and there's plenty of them in Rochdale, right, Hazel, you've gone for Jenny. Sorry, Jenny, you've gone for Hazel.
I've gone for Hazel. I like the idea of the gravy jug, but that's an awfully thin spout, so you'd have to make sure there weren't any lumps in your gravy. And I've gone for Hazel because I like the idea of it being made by a designer or maker who was a bit of a rebel. That handle looks completely outrageous to me. So that's why I've gone for Hazel.
All right, let's just remind you, Ned, you're out in the cold, blown out, gone, not in the race. So Jenny's on Hazel at £4,300. Steve's on Tim at £4,400. Back now to tenants, and this is what actually happened on the day.
Lot 202, £1,800 is bid at £1,800, 1,900, 2,000, 2,200, 2,400, 2,600, 2,800, 4,400. Still on the telephone at £4,400. It's against the room at £4,400.
£4,400. Steve, you believed Tim, and thus you pick up 10 points. Well, that was a very lot of money.
It's a wonderful prize. They're very rare objects. What I particularly like about this one is this bright cut decoration on it. You've noticed that engraving that went around the cartouche, which Hazel referred to. I mean, that's very nice work. And pear wood handle, I mean, it's an exquisite little bit. And it made an exquisite prize.
Now to the round where our contestants challenge the panellists. Jenny has brought in something and given it to Tim. 2 ships in bottles. Jenny.
Ships in bottles have been around for at least 200 years, probably longer. Originally made usually by sailors to while away the time on those long voyages. From the late 19th century onwards, an awful lot more were made as fakes and huge numbers as tourist knickknacks. One of those was made by a sailor, probably at sea. So my question is, which one?
Are we doing this between the two of us?
I think we have to agree.
I mean, that's the traditional looking one,
It
isn't it?
is,
It
that's
probably
what
means it's the wrong answer.
Ask you. I won't dwell.
Right,
and must
okay.
have your decision.
Let's go for the old one.
Right.
If we're wrong, then she's perpetrated
Then
a
it's
terrible
Cecil.
deception.
The five-masted brig on the cradle, are they right?
They are absolutely spot on.
They're spot on. Well done, and you're deprived now of 5 points. Round of applause to the panellists. Surprise, surprise, Steve from Rochdale has brought in some cigarette cards in silver frame. They're beautiful, aren't they, Steve? Tell us something about them.
Yeah, they're from a collection called Dandies, and they're both of Benjamin Disraeli. And they are slightly different. And both of these cards date from the 1930s, but which one of these was printed first?
Well, let's see what the differences are.
Of
course,
yes.
probably one. The Houses of Parliament were burnt down around then, weren't they? So one is painted after the Big Ben went back up, and one is painted before. So I suppose this one is probably. We're going to say that the one without Big Ben is the earlier one.
You'd be wrong. The reason being that it was actually a mistake. This is from a painting painted by Christopher Clark for when Benjamin Disraeli would have been 22 years of age. That would have been 1826. Benjamin Disraeli didn't enter Parliament until 1837. Big Ben hadn't been built, and it was factually wrong. The first printing was factually wrong, and they had to erase it.
We were on the right clue, but we made the wrong deduction.
You didn't get it quite right, so Steve picks up another 5 points. He's now in the lead against this pure, innocent young girl from Suffolk. 10 points to 25. As we go to the last round, it's round 4, lot 3, Phillips, Ladykirk House, Ayrshire, and here it is. And this is Ned's magic box. All the loose ends and scripted impromptu gags are within. Secret compartments, hidden drawers, some naive, some lavish. Ned, do you have hidden drawers?
No, I'm only too ready to show them. Spices were a great luxury in Europe right through 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, hence this very grand. This is 20 inches high. It's a lockable spice cabinet with internal drawers. Possibly German. It's the type that you'd find in any grand house across Central Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries. Spices, of course, were terribly essential in those days because there was no refrigeration, no refrigerators, no cold boxes, and food would go off, and it was essential to have the spices to spice them up, or indeed to conceal the taste of the rotting flesh or the very high smell which came out. And you had the pepper smelling more strongly than the meat. The box would have been kept out of sight, and small amounts would have been ladled out, the relevant spices were ladled out by the lady of the house to whoever was doing the cooking that day. It's a lovely thing. It's 2,800 quid.
£2,800. Tim?
Well, thanks to Ned, we can almost smell it from here, can't we? Of course, it's all nonsense. Nothing to do with spices at all. It's Spanish, and it's a cabinet of a type called a bargueno. It's about 40 inches wide, so substantially larger than Ned reckons. It's early 18th century and was used for letters, invoices, and other important domestic documents in your average upper-class Spanish family. The front falls, hinge from the front, and it would have then stood on a special table or stand. This one, in fact, had no table or stand, so it is as you see it. It's good quality with gilt metal mounts on a walnut carcass. It's carved and painted with gilt wood fitments and geometric designs. And it's fairly rare in England, but relatively common in Spain, actually. And it made £4,000 in the sale.
Finally, Hazel.
Well, Tim's on the right lines, but it's not Spanish, it's Italian. It's late 17th century, and it was used by government ministers when they were often carried away to neighbouring city-states for little delegations, a bit like team bonding sessions at Bournemouth. Now, they take or not. Eastbourne, I believe, yes. And would take them in this travelling trunk, or cassettone. It's a cassettone, with all their state papers and government seals. Now, it's a very, very rare piece because only the wealthy, who were educated ones, obviously, could read. Mind you, the government ministers, after a few vino rosso, couldn't read either. Not many of these have survived, and it's oak, pierced iron plates with beautiful, lovely inlaid ivory fittings. And the price it fetched reflects the very high quality of this piece because it fetched £9,800 at auction.
So, Ned says it's a large spice box, probably made in Germany, £2,800. Tim, it's a Spanish cabinet called a Vegueno or Balgueno, £4,000. Finally, Hazel, it's an Italian travelling trunk or cassettone at £9,800. So, for the last time in Gothic Grange, I say, show me your perils. So, Jenny. So, Steve is going for Hazel. They're both going for Hazel, all right. Why are you backing Hazel, Jan?
I like the idea of it being a spice box, but it's just too pretty to be locked away.
Steve?
I was going to go for Tim, actually, but until he said it was walnut, and it didn't look like walnut to me, it looked like oak. So when Hazel said it was oak, I went for the Hazel.
You're both going for Hazel at £9,800. Out in the cold is Ned, 2008, and Tim at £4,000. Here's what happened at Phillips on the day.
Lot 629 now. 2008 is your bid against both commissions at £2,800. It's standing at the back then. 3,000 is a new bidder. 3,002, 3,004, 3,006, 3,008, 4,000. No, £4,000 then is the bid standing in the room at £4,000. All done at £4,000.
£4,000, both of you knocked out. Jenny smiled, Steve grimaced. You were misled by Hazel. Tim, clear it up.
Well, it is difficult sometimes, these timbers, you're quite right. In Spain, there's lots of walnut lying around, and you do get things made in the solid out of walnut, and a typically English walnut piece of furniture would be finely figured in. You'd expect to have all those nice figurings on the outer surface. So this is solid walnut, in fact. I think it's a remarkably reasonable bargueno, actually, because the amount of work inside is incredible. If you look at all those geometric designs inside this cabinet, I mean, Hispano-Moresque, the sort of Moorish occupation of Spain, all those influences dragged on through the decorative arts in Spain for some hundreds of years. And in this cabinet, you see it all. And I think at £4,000, quite cheap, actually.
But meanwhile, back at the competition, Jenny is the going on duck. Meanwhile, Steve, you take away from the hands of Tim
your prize, which is a charming little late 18th or early 19th century New Hall porcelain milk jug, all decorated with chinoiserie to remind you of this special day.
Taking you back to Rochdale.
How much?
What? So, let me just thank Jenny and Steve being super contestants, and Tim, Hazel and Ned. You, the audience in Gothic Grange, and especially you for watching this Galley Muffrey. Till we meet again, I wish you was ever a very fond farewell.
Enter a new dimension on BBC Two.
I'm going into orbit. I'm going to leave this planet altogether.
This isn't a winter break to Mars.
Travel beyond the limit.
I just know I'm gonna crash it.
Never ever panic. And expect the unexpected.
This landscape is totally weird.
Viruses are spread by greenfly.
This is about the hottest wine I've ever tasted.
Escape the routine. Monday to Friday, 8:30 on BBC Two.